Well, say hey, this is the good Dr. Glenn Livingston, and I'm here with my partner and my friend Yoav Ezer. How are you doing today, Yoav?
Perfectly well. Thank you, Glenn.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. I know you're lying because you had a death in the family this week and everything, so I really appreciate you doing this. That's what business is like sometimes. Sometimes the show has to go on, and people show up with their best game face, and they take care of everybody else. So that's what we're going to do. We're here to talk today about how you can create information products with joint ventures. Just in case people don't know, I'm actually not very fond of the word information product, but it's a very popular word. And it comes from the days when the direct response champions figured out that they could sell paper and ink for 10 times margin, with a 90%, 95% margin, basically selling newsletters, DVDs, audio tapes, that kind of thing. What they figured out was that people buy benefits, and some of the best products you could sell because they were so high margin were products that were really purely information about how to get rid of a problem that you have and you don't want, or how to get a result that you don't have and you do want. And I actually think that the information product marketing process that sprang up around that, when it's done right and ethically, has more to do with using the internet to supercharge your ability to form relationships. Because in the end, if you want to solve a problem that you have but don't want, or get a result that you want but don't have, what you'd ultimately like to do is sit down with a loving uncle or aunt in their living room and say, hey, Uncle Harry, I've got this problem. You're older and wiser and more experienced in this area. What should I do? And like, and trust Uncle Harry, and Uncle Harry sits down and he says, well, I'm going to tell you how it is, and this is what you need to know, and this is what you need to ask, and this is how you're going to solve it. And that's what people want. And information marketing, especially on the internet, with leveraging the internet's ability to do what Uncle Harry would have done with you without your presence. Do it 24/7 on autopilot. And what does that have to do with joint ventures? Well, what it has to do with joint ventures is when you get someone who wants to work with you, ideally, you don't want to just say, well, mail this thing to my list and let's hope that it works. Right? I've done million-dollar projects, and I've been in boardrooms with corporate presidents and kind of traveled the world and been with all these MBAs. And I've heard a lot of marketing speak, but the best thing I ever heard or figured out was that marketing is essentially the process of asking people what they want and then giving it to them. And sometimes you break them up into groups, and you come up with images that represent what they want, and come up with slogans and songs and all that kind of stuff. But ultimately, if you ask people what they want and you give it to them, if I go to my Uncle Harry and I say, Uncle Harry, I've got this problem, and he says, well, tell me about it, and he listens very carefully, and then he responds specifically to what I ask, I'm most likely to act on that advice. What we're going to talk about today is a simple 4-question survey you can use with your partners to make sure that, well, nothing is ever 100% guaranteed to sell, but to make sure that you're really in tune with what your joint venture partners list really wants. You can actually create the product from scratch with joint ventures. You could also use this to tailor the way that you position your existing product or service to your joint venture partners list, because every list is going to be a little bit different. You're going to figure out what their specific pain points are. You're going to figure out the language they use to talk about those pain points. You're going to see how you can actually create a product very specifically for a partner's list, so you can give these people on the list what they want. You're going to see how these simple surveys will help you to write sales copy for the product. You're going to see how this is going to help you expand beyond your initial audience and how to find partners to create products with. So we've got a lot to cover today, and this is actually one of my specialties. I ran a marketing research firm for many years and consulted for, probably 30 to 50 of the Fortune 500 companies. So yes, I also use this kind of survey to enter my own markets. For those of you that don't know my whole story, I'm a psychologist by training, and I always want to do more than just work with patients as a small country doctor. I wanted to have a bigger impact on the world. I married a marketer, and I learned a lot of this stuff, and I got a little tired of the corporate jet set. There was a time when I had to fly to Tokyo and back for a 1-hour meeting, and then I got bronchitis for 3 months after that, and I said, you know what? I don't care how much money they're going to throw at me. It's just not worth it to live like that. And there were other things that happened along the way, including making a big mistake, losing a lot of money because I didn't do my research. But basically, by the time I was 38, 39 years old, I was ready to remake myself, and I've decided to take all this information that I knew, all of the research methods that I know, and develop my own publishing business. And I actually entered 17 different markets profitably, and I attribute that to not just the basics of asking people what they want and giving it to them, but some special ways that I have of processing surveys and looking at how the questions relate to one another. We'll talk a little bit more about how that works later on, and looking for the most responsive people in the survey, and a number of things that I attribute to that method that really reduces the risk and makes it infinitely more likely that not only will you develop a product and sales copy that matches what the audience wants, but matches what the most responsive people in that audience want. So that's kind of my background about doing that. I've been teaching this for many years. I've had thousands of students going into hundreds of different markets: Excel training, body language, memory, internet marketing, coaching, Sudoku. No, that was mine. Consulting, karate, as many different niches as you could think of. I've had people that are using this to enter it, and they all spend a lot of time figuring out how to do it because it really does reduce the risk. Nothing is guaranteed 100%, but it really does reduce the risk. And if you think about it, it makes sense, because if you know what people want, then it's less risky, right? Okay. The idea is that you combine this survey with joint ventures to create a product or service that sells to the list of your partner. That's the idea. I'm pausing sometimes because my attorney tells me we can't ever say that the product will 100% sell, but we're dramatically reducing the risk, and this makes the most sense to me. I don't know why anybody would want to do it without this method, but...
Can I add to that, Glenn?
Yeah.
What you're doing with the survey method and joint ventures is you're reducing the risk, or you're creating a much higher chance of success by adding joint ventures to that, because you're not only using the survey on a stream of people that comes from a search, you're using it on a very cohesive group of people that exist on a person's list. They're already thinking the same thoughts, and they're living in the same kind of world, and they have the same kind of values, so you're reducing the risk twice when you use joint ventures and the survey method.
Oh, yeah. And if you remember back to video number 1, joint ventures are a less risky way of doing business anyway, because you're not marketing in a competitive environment. People are endorsing you and taking you from your email box or your regular mailbox or even a phone call. They're taking you from there to tell you about an offer, and it's not like you're marketing to people who are comparison shopping and looking at all the competitors. So when you combine that with the fact that this is researched, then you have a much greater chance of success. So what you do with the survey is you create a detailed product outline from the responses. It helps you write killer copy to sell that product, and it's not something that's a overnight profit plan, but it's the basis for something that can sell for years and be the foundation of a really solid business because you took the time to figure out how to really partner with that person. Okay. So here's the process. You send the survey to the joint ventures partner list, and if the response is good, well, Yoav has a number there of 100 answers. It really depends upon the size of the list.
Right.
But I think what you're saying, Yoav, is that you need at least 100 answers before you can work with the data. And I prefer that you had 150, 200 answers. I prefer that. But there is an element of assessing the risk in the survey itself because, see, if your partner sends a message to his list, and that message says, I need your help, first name, whatever the people's first name is. And if they're not going to get 2 or 3% of the people to click through on that, and then somewhere between 1/3 and a half of the people to actually answer this very short survey process, what it tells you is they don't have a terrific relationship with their list. Now, does that mean you shouldn't go forward? No. Depending upon how big their list is and how willing these people are to mail for you, you can still make that really work. But it is an indication of the relationship that the owner has with the list. So try to get those numbers, and maybe don't necessarily say anything to your partner about it, but keep track of it and compare that between partners, and you'll be amazed at what a good indicator that is of how well that partner takes care of the list, and maybe spend a little more time working with the people who take better care of the list, and ideally they have large lists too.
Yeah.
Okay.
And if I can add, it also might indicate, if you're getting a very low response, that the subject of the survey is not interesting to the list. So the people in the list are not interested in that subject. They don't have an opinion. Either way, if it's a low 1% or lower, it means that something is not going to work here.
Yes. Well, if you have a really cooperative, eager partner who's willing to engage in this method, you might want to have them watch this video to get them motivated about it. If you have a cooperative, eager partner who's willing to do that, they can actually send several surveys over the course of a month or two, and you can decide to develop the product that has the best response. That's another way of assessing what the list really wants, is just their willingness to fill out the survey in the first place.
The flip side is if you get a very high response, then you know that you're onto something good. So, for example, for this product, the one you're learning from right now, we got about a bit more than 4% response, which indicated that it's a subject that interests the list.
More than 4% of the people that we sent this to clicked through and took the survey, and I think they all took the survey, but I know that more than 4% of them clicked through. It was the highest number of surveys that I ever got from sending an email to my buyer list. The highest number of surveys we ever got, and so that's why Yoav and I jumped on developing the product. And if you think about it, it makes sense because joint ventures are some of the highest converting business propositions that there are with the lowest barrier to entry where you can actually be up and running quickly. Once you have your response and you know that the list is good, then what you're going to do is analyze the data, and we're going to show you how to create a product based on that response. So then you're going to sell the product that you created based on the survey data to the list, and it's much more likely, very likely to sell because, again, you're giving the people exactly what they told you that they wanted. When you run the first set of sales, you might not want to run it to the whole list because you can get initial testimonials and feedback and add that to the sales process, and then your process is even more likely to sell, and you can make the most from going back to your partners list there. And then you can then look to expand beyond this partners list to other partners, advertising, etc. Now that you understand the strategy, let's talk about the tactics. And the first part of the tactics is the 4-question survey. And we're going to demonstrate with the assumption that our partner offers maybe golf DVDs or golf lessons to his list, maybe video golf lessons, that kind of thing. And we would like to figure out what type of additional product we could create to sell to his list of golf aficionados. And what you would do is substitute the questions about golf for something more appropriate for your partner's niche. So you start out with what's your most important question about golf? What's the biggest problem preventing you from fully reaching your goal in golf or your goals in golf? How hard has it been for you to find the information on the internet to reach your biggest goals in golf? And you want to just break that down to 3 choices, very hard, hard, or not at all. And is there anything else you'd really like to know about golf? Those are the 4 questions, and they're kind of magic questions because they help you zero in on what's most important to the prospect, what level of frustration they're experiencing in trying to accomplish this goal, and they'll give you ideas for how else you can serve them that the market is not meeting, right? Because if they're having a really hard time finding information and they engage with the survey, they give you a lot of information about their most important questions. So there's a difference between someone saying, well, when do you use a 4-iron or a 5-iron? Or I need to figure out when to use a 4-iron or a 5-iron because I've been trying to get to this score for so many years and I always seem to miss the pot and I wind up 3 putts over par. They just go on and on and on. That's a more responsive prospect, and if they go on and on and on like that and they tell you that it's really hard to find information to help them, that's someone who's very engaged, who really wants to solve this problem, and is not being served by the market with a viable solution. What you want to do is filter out the shorter responses and the information that people say is really easy to find because they're saying they want to know that, but they've seen a bunch of things and they just haven't really bought yet. You want to figure out something that's a real point of difference. You want to find out something that really will make you shine above everything else they've seen in the market. So filter out those shorter responses, filter out the responses everybody says it's really easy to find, and then group the questions into subjects. And to create a book, you write a chapter for each subject. To create a set of CDs or DVDs, you find an expert on each subject and you record an interview with them, or maybe you are the expert, but if you don't have to be the expert, you can certainly find people to talk about this. You make an audio or a video for each one, and now what you have is a product that is matched to what people who are more responsive in the market really want. That's the essentials of how you do it. You can do it in a lot more detailed way if you really want to, but basically ask them those 4 questions. Look for the more responsive people who give you longer messages and say it's hard to find, and then you write a book answering the questions with a chapter for each subject, or you record audios and videos for each subject, and voila, you have an information product that matches what the most important people in the market say that they want.
Just want to go back to the first point, to the first bullet. When you first start to get responses from a list, you're very excited, but you really need to filter out the non-responsive people. I have a list, I have several lists about Excel, and I ran a survey about one type of Excel object, and I got a ton of responses, but all of them were short, like 2 words or 3 words. And when I talked to the people, they told me, listen, we like you. I'm the list owner. They have a relationship with me. So we wanted to answer the survey, but we didn't have much to say. So that was an indication for me not to create an information product for this survey.
That's an important point. That just says that the people have a good relationship with the list, so they wanted to comply and help the list owner out when the list owner had a request, but they're not really so interested after all.
Right.
You do want to see that at least 20 or 30% of the people are giving you long answers and saying that it's difficult to find information.
Okay, moving forward.
We kind of talked about this, but once you have the whole product laid out with your subjects and questions from the most responsive people in the market, then you find some experts. You create a joint venture with the experts, and you interview them in an audio or even in a transcript. Sometimes there are email interviews that go back and forth. But you get their deep level of knowledge, and you can kind of borrow their credibility. Once you engage these people like that, you'll actually have another joint venture partner who may be willing to promote the product because they're going to want their audience to hear how cool they came out on the interview, and so you're actually extending your reach for the product.
Glenn, I want to add what they can learn in the advanced training, if that's okay.
Yes.
In the advanced training, in the full joint venture fast track training, you will discover how to easily find these experts. We show you 2 sites that hold thousands of different experts, and you can easily find the expert you need for your specific product. And we will also go into great detail on how you can get them to work for you for free, so you retain the profits. And that's especially important because if you start dividing up your profits, then eventually you'll stay with very little. And you need to remember that you're also giving profits to your original JV partner, so you don't want to give any more parts of the income to other experts, and we show you exactly how to do it. And of course, when you buy the full training, you'll get access to all the extras we already have in the Joint Venture Insiders Club, and you can start working with them to create your products.
Yoav, can you just say a few more words about what the Joint Venture Insiders Club is, because I don't think we can assume that everybody's watched every video. Would you like me to do that?
Sure, go ahead.
One of the things that Yoav and I realized as we were producing this product was that it would be great if we gave people a fast track to connecting with experts that were like-minded in terms of the philosophies that we talked about. Like, wouldn't it be great if you found a partner who had already watched a video like this and really understood the survey process so that you wouldn't have to convince them to do a survey? Wouldn't it be great if you knew from the get-go that when you were trying to approach these people that they were joint venture minded, that they were looking for long-term, stable, lucrative partnerships, that they really wanted to protect their list and yours, and they were just easier to connect with and easier to work with because they had the joint venture training that we actually provided. So it's different than just approaching strangers necessarily. You actually get to work with people that are like-minded, eager to develop joint ventures, and want to work in the way that really produces long-term, profitable, solid businesses. So that's what the Joint Venture Insiders Club is, and during this launch period, you have the ability to get lifetime access to that for free when you buy the more comprehensive training, which is also available at a ridiculously affordable price. So
we talk about that in a couple of minutes.
Okay.
Now you know how to create your product. You know how to get the outline, how to get the experts to interview, how to produce the product or the book, but you still need to sell it. And the survey is an excellent source of material for your sales copy. Glenn, do you want to take it away?
Just to kind of bring this full circle, when you ask people what they want and give it to them, you want to do that in their language. And so let's say you repeatedly saw in the survey that people said what they want to learn about golf is, I just want to know how to get the putt in the effing hole. Excuse my language, which I omitted, but I just want to know how to get the putt in the effing hole. If you can repeat back to them in the sales copy, you'll finally be able to get the putt in the effing hole, then how likely do you think it is that they're going to resonate with that? Right? Very likely. That's where you get the information for your sales copy. You actually don't have to sit and stare at a blank page. You kind of organize everything that the people told you in the survey. You change it into benefit language. What that means is customer says, how do I get the putt in the effing hole? And you say, see how to get the putt in the effing hole. The first one is consumer question. The second one is benefit language. And Yoav has something that he invented called the quadruple rewrite technique, which says that by the fourth time, Yoav, you might want to articulate this better than I can, but by the fourth time you've rewritten each bullet, you're going to come up with one that's really stellar. Is that what you were going to say?
Sure. So you probably noticed that I have a bit of an accent and that English is not my first language. Because of that, I had a very hard time writing sales copy until I started using this technique. And this technique is very simple. You take the repetitive, hyper-responsive question, how do I get the putt in the effing hole? And you take a list of bullet templates. Bullet templates are proven ways to write sales bullets. And you can find, if you just search Google for bullet templates, a list of bullet templates, you'll find several of those. And then you rewrite that question 4 times with different templates. So the first one would be something like how to get the putt in the effing hole. That's a how-to template. And the second one would be the simple and easy way to get the putt in the effing hole. And when you write 4 of those, the fourth usually, even if you're not a writer at all and English is not your first language, by the time you reach the fourth, your imagination would have created something very compelling. And this worked for me. Glenn, would you say it worked well?
I think it works exceptionally well. I think that it works for people who speak English as well, Yoav. And by the way, I'm really happy now that I have on tape you saying get the putt in the effing hole 4 times in your Hebrew accent. But I think it works exceptionally well for people who don't have the native language problem because there's something almost magical about trying to convey a benefit 4 or 5 times to a prospect. Something almost magical about it. You start to hear where the redundancy is, you hear where the more powerful words are, you make it a little more concise. I think that's enough said about that. It's a really cool technique. Discover 7 ways to get the ball in the effing hole. The Yoav Ezer technique for getting the ball in the effing hole. Just keep going like that until you find the best one.
Right.
The point is that your sales copy really shines because it echoes the conversation in your customer's mind. It actually is the conversation in the most responsive customer's mind, and it addresses topics that are really, really interesting to them.
Right. And when you have all those bullets laid out, so you took the questions and you converted them into sales messages, into sales bullets, then you have your raw material. And then you take the best bullets and use them as subheads for the subjects. And your very best bullet you turn into the headline for the entire sales page. And again, like Glenn said, your copy will shine because first and foremost, you echo the conversation in your customer's mind. You answer their question, their most pressing, burning questions, and you address the topics that are interesting to them. So not only are you talking in their language, but you're very, very comprehensive in your solution.
Yes. Yaman.
There's a bunch of stuff you need to add, and we won't go into detail here. You can find all these things spread across the internet. You need an introduction. You need proof, like testimonials or case studies. There's other types of proof.
By the way, when you interview experts, you can borrow their credibility and experience as proof. You don't necessarily have to have it yourself.
Right. And you need to add the terms of the sale and the bonuses you're going to give with the product and the price. And to end it all with a call to action, so your customer knows that he needs to buy, and you have a sales copy. Now, this will take a bit of time, and you need a little more experience and a little more guidance in how to write the sales copy if you're very new to sales copy. In the advanced training, we're going to show you how you can get all the resources you need to write sales copy for less than $3. So we did the research and we found a place that can actually show you everything you need for less than $3. You can buy a very expensive copywriting training course for thousands of dollars, and you can mentor with a copywriter for tens of thousands of dollars. But to write a basic sales copy, you need that resource that costs less than $3 and the survey method we described up until now. And if you really feel that by the end of this process your sales copy isn't good enough, then you can take what you've done, the headlines, the subheads, the bullets, and all the other elements of the sales copy, and hire an ace copywriter, someone who's very adept at producing sales copy, Just let them do the final draft of the copy. Let them shine your copy. And this will cost a fraction than what copywriters charge because you've done 98% of the work. They just need to put the icing on the cake.
Very good.
Just a little reminder, the fast track to creating products would be, of course, to join the Joint Ventures Insiders Club. And you can find a partner with a list to send the survey to. You can get experts to help you flesh out your product and expand your reach to other partners in the group. Beyond that, for people who aren't familiar with the club yet, what we provide is a monthly networking webinar where Glenn facilitates the meeting and helps each of the members in the webinar to show and describe their product and their offering. And we actually help people do business in the webinar. And the last webinar we had, I think I made one referral and Glenn made another referral. So 2 people from the webinar got referred to joint venture partners outside of the webinar. They can do business amongst themselves. And that's very valuable. We also recorded the webinar and we broadcast it to our entire buyers list. So your offer, when you get on one of those webinars, your offer will be exposed to thousands of potential customers and joint venture partners on our buyers list. So it's a very, very strong place to kickstart your joint venture effort.
And it's more than just an email. It's a recorded presentation of your best offer. I really think there's nothing like this, especially at this price, available anywhere else. And I would encourage you to get in on the training while the lifetime access to the Joint Venture Insiders Club is still free. It will be $250 after the introductory period, which you can reference on this page. You'll know exactly when that's over. And Yoav, is there anything else you'd like to say?
No, I think we covered it.